Hey, have you guys ever gotten stuck down the rabbit trail of YouTube recommendations? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, like 1 minute you're watching that Watch Mojo Top 10, and then you see that video and it says, oh, recommended, so you click on it, and then you click on the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and next thing you know, you've just spent 2 hours watching the Marble Olympics. You know what that is? It's that show on YouTube where marbles, you can put up that video, where marbles compete in different Olympic challenges, and you heard me right, I said marbles. It's crazy, and I promise you, if you start watching this, you will get hooked, and you will start rooting for one of your teams. It is incredible. I recommend it, unless you want to spend hours on hours watching marbles do competitions. But it's worth it. So the other day, I'm like stuck down this YouTube rabbit trail, right? And I come across this video that's really cool. And it's a video of a sculptor, an artist named Michael Murphy. And he creates these really cool perspective art pieces. Why don't we throw up that first video? So what does this look like to you, right? Just a bunch of dots hanging from the ceiling? Wrong, it's an eye. Boom, mind blown. What about this next one? This one, just a bunch of trash hanging from the ceiling, right? Wrong, it's a face. How crazy is that? But the coolest ones are the ones where you start out with something like a pair of Nikes, right? And then you switch your angle, and when you look at it, boom, Jordan's logo. That's so cool. So this guy's name's Michael Murphy. Go check him out. But as I'm watching this, a common theme kind of came up, and it's this idea of perspective. From one angle, that art looks like one thing. When you get into the right space, though, it starts to take on a whole new meaning, and the beauty and the artwork actually starts to reveal itself. And this idea of perspective sort of got me thinking about life. How often in life can we have a preconceived idea of a certain thing, and we think we understand it, and we think we know it, but as time goes on, we kind of gain a new vantage point, we gain a new perspective, and we end up looking at that thing in a totally new way. And that's kind of my goal for today. I want to change your perspective on life. By the end of today, I'm hoping that you look at your life a little bit differently. This is the first week of a 2-week series that we're calling the Hard Knock Life. And the goal of this series is that we're trying to answer the question, what are you supposed to do when life keeps knocking you down? Because life can be pretty ruthless sometimes, can't it? Especially 2020. Man, 2020 has hit us hard, and it is not giving us a chance to get up and catch our breath. It's kicking us while we're down on the ground. 2020 is pretty ruthless. Maybe for you this year, your parents lost their jobs due to COVID. Or maybe you know somebody who got sick. Maybe right now home life kind of sucks and your family life is tense. I've been there. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to feel like your world is falling apart. So what are you supposed to do in those moments? How are you supposed to respond when life knocks you down? We have a few options, right? Can we indulge in self-pity, right? We just say, woe is me. We try to get sympathy from other people. Do we blame other people? Do we blame God? As a Christ follower, how am I supposed to respond when life gets difficult? Well, the Bible's actually pretty clear on this topic. James was the brother of Jesus. Can you imagine being the brother of Jesus? Man, living in Jesus' shadow. And in fact, James didn't actually really even believe in Jesus until Jesus was resurrected from the dead. And then James became an early church leader in Jerusalem. And later in life, he wrote a letter to a group of Christians that were scattered across the known world who are going through some really tough times, kind of like what we're experiencing right now. And this is what he says to them. It'll be on the screen. It says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything." Consider it pure joy. Excuse me, Mr. James, Pastor James. Who do you think you are? Consider it pure joy. Am I supposed to consider it pure joy when my parents are going through a divorce? Am I supposed to consider it pure joy when my sister just got diagnosed with cancer? Am I supposed to consider it pure joy when I'm struggling with anxiety? I think we need to take a step back here. And we want to really see what James is actually trying to teach us. Because what James is not saying is he's not saying that we should be a masochist who enjoys pain and has pleasure in pain. He's not telling us that we need to be happy about the fact that our life sucks. That's not what James is saying. So what is he saying? Well, if you're taking notes, this is our first point of today. This is so, so important. Happiness is an external feeling. Joy is an internal decision. Happiness is an external feeling, but joy is an internal decision. On the surface, happiness and joy seem like they could be interchangeable, but they're not. They're actually a lot different. You see, happiness is dependent on your current circumstances. If life is going good for you at this moment, you're happy. But joy can exist regardless of your current circumstances. Happiness is a feeling, but joy is a choice. See, if all you're after in life is happiness, then you'll experience high highs and low lows. Happiness is fully dependent on how comfortable and good your life is at this very moment. So, if you're rocking some new swag, your crush just winked at you, man, you are on cloud 9. Life couldn't get any better, right? But if you're sitting next to somebody who's a little smelly, if you're getting bored from this sermon, man, there's not much happiness going around. Happiness is based on your current circumstances, but joy is a decision. Joy is a choice. If you're after happiness, then you will constantly be getting tossed around by the waves of life. And life can be pretty ruthless sometimes. And yet, I think we all know people whose life is falling apart. Maybe they're going through financial problems or health problems. Life is not going good for them, and yet there is a joy, there is a hope, there is a peace that just exudes from them, and you look at them and you think, how can you be so okay with this? It's because they're not after happiness. They're after joy, and joy is a decision. It's not dependent on your current circumstances. You remember how James says, consider it pure joy? That word consider, in the original language, which was in Greek, that word consider is the word hegiomai. Everybody say hegiomai. Hegiomai. And it literally means your personal viewpoint. It's your outlook. It's how you view a certain thing. So whatever trial you're going through, whatever hardship you're facing, everyone else might look at it and think, man, that sucks, but you can look at it with a different outlook. You can look at it with a different hegiomai and say, you know what? My joy is not based on my current circumstances, and I can have joy regardless of what I'm going through. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Nathan, this whole joy, choosing to be joyful in the midst of struggles, it sounds a lot like you're just being in denial. Is that what choosing to be joyful is? Is it just pretending like everything around you is not falling apart? Are you the physical embodiment of that "this is fine" dog, that meme, where everything is on fire around you, but you're just like, nah, this is fine. This is good. It's okay. Is that what being joyful in the midst of struggle is? Not at all. See, joy is not rooted in our circumstances. We're not finding pleasure in the pain. Joy is simply the act of reminding yourself that no matter what battle you're facing right now, that the battle that really matters, the battle that is most important, has already been won. The battle that really matters, the victory has already taken place. And that brings me to my second point of today. If you're taking notes, write this down. We need to focus on the eternal, not the temporary. We need to focus on the eternal, not the temporary. Jesus did not come to the earth to make our lives easier. Jesus did not come to the earth to fix all of your problems, to make your life comfortable and easy. When Jesus was on earth for the 30 years that he lived, he healed hundreds and hundreds of people. He did miracles. It was awesome. But for every person he healed, there were actually hundreds of millions of people that he didn't. Jesus was only alive for 33 years. Only 3 of those years was him doing ministry. He only lived at a certain time in history in a certain place. He couldn't have fixed everybody's problems. It's almost like that wasn't his goal. It's almost like Jesus coming down to earth and doing miracles and healing people wasn't the point. It's almost like Jesus had something else in mind, something bigger, something better. And it's perfectly exemplified in the story found in Luke chapter 5, which you can read later. I'll paraphrase it for you right now. Jesus was going around healing people, doing miracles, teaching. It was great. And everybody wanted to be around Jesus. And one day, Jesus is teaching in this house. And man, the health people would hate it because it was like a COVID-19 melting pot. Man, people were shoulder to shoulder, no social distancing, no masks. It was a packed house. You literally could not get inside. And these 4 friends have a buddy who's paralyzed. He can't walk. He's a paraplegic. And they think, man, if we could just get my friend to Jesus, Jesus could heal his legs. Jesus could change his life. And so their genius idea, even though they could not get into the house because it was so packed, was they climbed on top of the roof and they caused hundreds of dollars in property damage and busted a hole through the ceiling and lowered their friend down to Jesus' feet. And it's this crazy moment where these friends, they lower their friend down who can't walk, who's paralyzed, who needs Jesus badly. And they lower him down to Jesus' feet. And Jesus looks at him. Jesus looks at his legs and he smiles. And he reaches out his hands and he says, "Your sins are forgiven." What? Jesus, your sins are forgiven? I can just imagine a disciple leaning over to Jesus saying, "Hey man, I know it's been a long day, but like, it's his legs. Like he needs his legs to be healed." And Jesus says, no. He came to get his legs healed, but I want to heal something even more important. You came for your legs, but I want to heal your heart. What you really need is for your sins to be forgiven. And by the way, Jesus actually did heal that guy, but it was only to prove to the Pharisees that if he could heal the man's legs, that he could also forgive the man's sins. But here's this amazing moment where this guy has such an obvious need for Jesus. Jesus, heal my legs. And Jesus looks at him and he says, no. Your real problem is your sin. I could fix your legs, but I want to fix your eternal problem, which is the same eternal problem that each of us face. And here's the thing. Even if that man never was healed, even if he was able to walk the rest of his life or he was in a bed the rest of his life, one day that man is going to die. And Jesus was way more concerned with that man's eternal destination than his temporary comfort. And so even if Jesus never healed that guy but forgave him of his sins, that man could go through the rest of his life living on that mat, unable to walk, but living with a joy and a hope and a peace. And people would look at him and they would say, "Man, your life sucks. How are you so happy? How are you so joyful?" And he's like, "Because I'm not focused on the temporary, I'm focused on the eternal. Yeah, my legs don't work, but Jesus fixed my real issue, which was my sin." Joy is a decision, and joy is not rooted in your trials. It's not rooted in your hardships. It's rooted in the hope that we have in Jesus. Jesus dying on the cross, paying the price for our sin, put the final nail in sin's coffin, so that we could experience forgiveness, so that we could experience eternal life with God. That's what Jesus came for. So even if he doesn't fix all your issues and you're still struggling, you can have a joy in the midst of it that says, yeah, my legs don't work. Yeah, my parents are getting divorced. Yeah, I'm struggling with anxiety, but it's okay because my sins are forgiven. My eternal destination is secure. The real battle has already been won. And that's why Jesus can say in John chapter 16, he can say, "In this world, you will have trouble." Not that you might have trouble, not maybe, you will have trouble. He says, you're going to be persecuted. Man, you're going to go through hardships. You're going to go through droughts and seasons of depression. It's not going to be easy, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And Jesus has overcome the world. Paul, a New Testament writer, understood this perfectly. Paul was a guy who dealt with his fair share of hardships, which included being beaten, being wrongfully imprisoned. He experienced being shipwrecked, starvation, homelessness, and that's just to start off the list. And he would write in Romans, he says, I consider that our present sufferings are not even worth comparing to the eternal glory that will be revealed in us. Paul says, look, whatever you're going through right now, it may be difficult, but it's not even on the same level. It's not even worth comparing to the victory that God has already won. So our joy is not rooted in our pain. Our joy is not rooted in the hardship and the trial. Our joy is rooted in the hope that we have in Jesus. It says, hey, I might be struggling. I might be fighting a battle, but the battle that matters most has already been won. So in your next trial, the next time you go through a difficult time, remember that this is not the end, that Jesus has already won the battle that really matters. Now, I know what you might be thinking, man, okay, I get that. So then what's the point of all this? What's the point of my struggle? What's the point of me going through these painful things? I get that the battle has already been won. I get that the ultimate victory has already taken place. So why do I have to fight? Why do I have to struggle? Well, it's right there in James. Remember, he said, you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. Why do I struggle? Why are you going through hardships? It's for your spiritual growth. This is our final point of today. If you're taking notes, you should write this down. That trials are the catalyst to growth. Trials are the catalyst to growth. They're the thing that actually spurs on you becoming more like Jesus. Now, I know this is true in my life, and I'm sure you know it's true in your life, that you don't grow more like Jesus when things are good. Right? When you're watching rainbows and sniffing daisies, you're not becoming more like Jesus. It's in the hardships, it's in the fire, it's in the trials that you grow more like him. Why? Because you have to persevere, as James says. And when you persevere, the only way you're going to do that is by relying on God. And when you rely on God, you trust in him. And the more you trust in him, the more you start to be like him. It's in those trials that we actually grow more like God. And it's not fun. It's never fun. You're not going to be like, yeah, I love this. But you look back on it and you start to see how God turned around your pain into growth. And I'm not saying that God causes your pain. I'm not saying that he's the source of your suffering. But sometimes he allows it. But it's never wasted. It's like watching Netflix, right? You know on Netflix, when you're watching a movie, there's that bar underneath, right? Like if I'm watching Spider-Man and you see that little scrub bar at the bottom, you can kind of go along in the movie. Right here in this one frame, things are not looking too good for Peter Parker, right? He's getting his butt whooped by the Green Goblin. Things are not good for him in this very moment. And he can look at that moment and say, man, I'm in a trial. I'm in a hardship. God, where are you? He can start to question God. Why am I going through such a hard time? But we're not concerned, right? Because all we need to do is skip ahead a few minutes and we see that he's macking on Mary Jane. He's already won the fight. He's beaten the Green Goblin and everything is good. But he can't see that in that moment. And let me tell you something. You might be in the middle of a trial right now, but you don't know how the story ends. Why not choose to trust the one who does? Why not choose to trust the God who already knows how he's going to turn that around into growth for you? When I was pretty young, my parents went through a really nasty divorce. And all of that coincided with my older siblings getting hooked on drugs and falling into the party scene. And I remember feeling, at that age, just feeling so hopeless. I felt so alone. I felt so lost. I was like Peter Parker in that one frame. Just, God, where are you? Why am I facing so much hardship right now? And I would never want to go through it again, but as I look back on that difficult time, I can already see how God changed that around and used that for growth for me. It was difficult. I didn't like it. I would never want to go through it again, But as I look back, I see that it wasn't wasted. I don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for what I went through. I don't even think I would be a Christian today if it wasn't for what I went through. Because I had to persevere. I had to rely on God. I needed His strength to get through that. I needed Him. And so that the next time that I face a trial, I know, man, God's been faithful in the past. And even though I might be like Peter Parker in that one frame, not knowing what's around the corner, I can trust in the God who does know around the corner. You want to know the best part about all of this is that when you struggle, when you go through hardships, and you have joy, and you persevere, people notice. Man, when life's not going good for you, but you choose to have a joy that exceeds your circumstances, people look at you and they say, what's different about you? People notice that. And God starts to change your test that you're going through into a testimony of His goodness. Paul, who went through such a hard time, literally wrote in prison while he was being falsely accused and thrown into prison, he writes this to a church. He says, now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what's happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. Paul says, yeah, it's not fun being in prison. It's not fun getting beaten, but I'm not focused on the temporary pain. I'm focused on the eternal gain. And God's already using this to make a difference in people's lives. Your trial is never wasted when you trust in God. And you can choose to be a beacon of light in a dark, dark world that desperately needs it. But it's not easy. I get that. It's easier to say this and to actually live it out. Life can throw some pretty big curveballs our way, and in those moments, it's easy to let worry and anxiety set in, which is why next week, Pastor Sydney is going to be coming up and sharing, how do you trust in God when worry and anxiety set in? And I want to encourage you to make sure to RSVP for that week, because it's going to be a great message, very practical. How do you trust in God in the midst of your worry and your anxiety? But as we close, I want to leave you with one final thought. It's kind of our big idea of today. If you're taking notes, write this down. Don't let today's battle distract you from tomorrow's victory. Don't let today's battle distract you from tomorrow's victory. Look, it might look hopeless right now. You may not be able to see how God could ever change this around for the good. You may be fighting, you may be battling, you may be struggling with depression, you may be sick, your parents might be going through a divorce, you might be struggling in school, or your friend group is falling apart, and you look at your situation and you think there's no hope. I can't see around the corner. Choose to trust in the one who can. Choose to trust in the one who already knows how He's going to turn it around and grow you through it. Life can be pretty difficult sometimes, and it's important to remember that in the same way we struggle, Jesus struggled as well. He went through hardships. He went through trials. He was beaten. He was nailed to a cross. He was killed, even though He had done nothing wrong. And He did that because He wanted to pay the price for our sin, the price that we can never pay ourselves, so that our moral debt that we had racked up over the years would be paid for, and that we could return to a perfect relationship with God. And I want to encourage you, if you've never made a decision before to follow Jesus, I want to give you that opportunity right now, today.